Hey guys, Shinmiri here, and today we're presenting our very first deck guide in the Crimson Curse expansion. Today we're looking at the new Scoia'tael leader from Crimson Curse. That's Dana Miedb, and she has a very interesting ability. She plays a Scoia'tael card from your deck, so she's a tutor. She pulls out any card that you want with 0 provision cost or less, and then this value is raised by 1 for every unique primary category among Scoia'tael cards in your starting deck. So she encourages you to play a lot of different types of races, a lot of different types of cards, and we're looking at a deck today that is an engine harmony deck. It runs a lot of engines, and it also takes advantage of a new keyword for Scoia'tael called harmony. So in this deck, we have 10 different card types, or 10 different primary category card types from Scoia'tael. There's Gnome, Nature, Dragon, Elf, Dryad, Human, Treant, Dwarf, Trap, and Beast. And this basically allows us to pull any Scoia'tael card from our deck with our leader. It's a very, very flexible ability, and she's much stronger than something like Calanth or Calvite because she gets you the card that you're missing in round 3 all the time. Like, she's guaranteed to get you whatever card you want from your deck, except for Cleaver in this deck, because Cleaver is actually a neutral, despite being a dwarf. He's not a Scoia'tael card. So this makes her really powerful, especially in round 3. You have decent amount of you have some thinning, you have mulligans every round, and then by the time you get to round 3, there's probably only 1 or 2 good win condition golds that you're missing from your hand, and you can use her to get those, the best one, or the one that's most important to you in that round. And she also allows you to play 2 different cards, or 2 cards in the same turn, without your opponent having any way to interrupt your combo, which is also pretty strong. All right, so how good is Harmony, the new Scoia'tael mechanic? A card like Cirsa has Harmony on it, and in this deck we've got the Water of Broccolon summoning the Dryad Fledglings that have Harmony on it. Harmony, it boosts that unit by 1 whenever you play a Scoia'tael unit with a unique primary category on your side. So it means that it's kind of like Thrive and Assimilate. It's an engine. The unit with Harmony has to be on the board first, and then when you play, let's say, a dwarf for the very first time, if you have no dwarves on your deck, and then you play a dwarf, then all your Harmony units boost themselves by 1. The keyword Harmony is good, but it's not amazing. I don't think it's as good as Thrive. It's a little bit harder to activate compared to Thrive. So we are not actually going to be playing all the Harmony cards in the collection. We're only going to be playing the good cards that are already good on their own, and Harmony is just like a bonus on top of those cards. So we're not playing the Bronze Harmony Dryads. We're not playing Dryad Fledgling as a Bronze 4 provision card. We're not playing Dryad Ranger. We are playing Cirsa. She's amazing. Even without Harmony, she would be played, I think. And then we're playing the Water of Broccolon, which is a special that spawn and summon a Dryad Fledgling to an allied row. If you control a Dryad already, spawn 2 of them to an allied row instead. So Water of Broccolon's a lot better than regular Dryad Fledgling because it pulls out 2 engines at the same time, which is a lot harder for your opponent to deal with. And you can combo Water of Broccolon with this new Scoia'tael card, Fauve. She's a Dryad herself, and she plays a nature card from your deck. Water of Broccolon is a nature card. So you play Fauve, you get Water of Broccolon out, it summons 2 Dryad Fledglings, immediately 8 tempo, and then you can even, if you want to, play Dana immediately after that, playing a Scoia'tael card with a unique primary category onto your board right away, and then boosting those 2 Dryad Fledglings, triggering their Harmony so that they immediately go from 3 to 4. Then this Fauve Water of Broccolon combo is playing for 10 points immediately, and you still have 2 4-point threats on the board. And your opponent probably can't deal with both of them at the same time, if even one. And even if they do, you play a lot of engines in this deck, so it attracts removal. It baits removal out from them, and then they don't have the answers for your other engines like Pavko Gale, Treant Boar, and Hawker Smugglers, and Saskia. So let's take a look at these engines. One of the strongest engines in this deck is Saskia. She has been around for a while, but she hasn't really had the support to become playable or to become competitive. But with the new Harmony archetype, she is much better now, and I think she's one of the strongest engines in this deck. So how does she work? She has order damage an enemy unit by 2, and base cooldown of 4. But every time you use her ability, the game checks if you have an elf in your hand, if you have a dwarf in your hand, and if you have a dryad in your hand. And for each one of those that you do have in your hand, Saskia's cooldown is temporarily reduced by 1. So if you happen to have all 3 races in your hand when you use her ability, then her cooldown is only 1 cooldown, and she gets to do her 2 damage every single turn, which is a really scary engine. An engine that gives you 2 points a turn, and in the form of damage, to help you remove your opponent's threats. And she's also a dragon. She's the only dragon in this deck, and she helps proc those harmony tags from the Dryad fledglings and from Circe. The next engine we have is Pavko Gale. He's one of the 3 humans in this deck. We've got Pavko Gale and the 2 Hawker Smugglers that happen to be human as well. He's an engine, very simple. Damage a unit by 1 every single turn, cooldown 1. It's also pretty threatening if you have a long round and they don't answer it. You have Treant Boar, which is like another version of Pavko Gale, or a similar version to Northern Realms Botchling Lubberkin. Another new card, very interesting, has some cool synergies. It deals 2 damage every other turn and heals itself every other turn. And then other engines we have are the Hawker Smugglers, hand buff engines. They don't give you tempo, but they give you carryover, which is sometimes even better. And the Hawker Smuggler can buff up your Sheldon Skags to get double the value on the Sheldon Skags. And the Hawker Smugglers can buff up your other engines, like Saskia, Treant Boar, and Pavko Gale, making them a little bit more resilient to damage removal when you immediately play them. So I think that's it for the engines here. We've got double Hawker Smuggler, that's 2, Treant Boar's 3, Pavko Gale 4, Saskia 5, and then the 3 Harmony units, Circe 6, and double Dryad Fledgling from Water of Brokilon. So this deck has a total of 8 engines, or 8 threats, and that's a lot. Most opponent decks will run out of answers for them and not have answers for all 8 of your threats, meaning some of your engines are going to stick and they're going to get value for you. All right, some of the other cards in this deck. Barnabas, a fan favorite gnome, the only gnome in the game right now. He procs Harmony because he's a unique tag. He helps your Dana get to 10, and your Dana, because she does get to 10 in this deck, can pull out the Barnabas as a finisher if you don't end up drawing him. He is a 12 for 10 if you have an Elf, Dwarf, and Dryad on the board when you play him. A nice finisher, and something to consider is you want to make sure you have one of each Elf, Dwarf, and Dryad on the board. You want to plan ahead, and maybe you want to protect some of those cards if you can before your opponent has a chance to remove them so that you get your full value from the Barnabas. Mullane is just a nice high provision, high value elf. This deck, the way we can look at this list is we can look at how many of each race there are, especially with elves, dwarfs, and dryads. The thing that we need to consider when we play the deck with these 3 races is, do we have enough targets for Barnabas, and do we have enough diversity in our hand to keep the cooldown on Saskia low? So how many elves do we have in this deck? We've got Mullane as 1. We've got Dragoons, 2 more from Dragoons. This deck only runs 3 elves. There's a couple different versions of this deck available. You can put in more elves if you want, but you want to maintain a balance between the number of elves, dwarves, and dryads. So this deck runs 3 elves. Most of the time in round 3, you're going to want to keep Mullane in your hand as the elf for Saskia, and then play it just before you play the Barnabas, so you have an elf for Barnabas as well. Sometimes you keep a Dragoon. Dragoon's not too bad. Speaking of elves, we can skip right to Dragoon. It has a lot of synergies with this deck. Dragoon helps move your Hawker Smugglers back to the melee row if they get answered by movement. Dragoon helps set up extra value on your Crushing Trap. Dragoon helps even get extra value from your Treant Boar. What you can do is you Treant Boar on ranged, you move it to the melee row, get 2 damage, and then if your opponent doesn't hit it and you don't need to heal the Treant Boar, you can even use Dragoon to move the Treant Boar from the melee row back to the range row, and then trigger the order again on the range row to get an extra 2 damage. Okay, so now we've finished with elves. We can talk about dwarves. We've got quite a few dwarves in this list, actually. We've got Cleaver. Cleaver is a neutral card. Remember, you cannot pull Cleaver with Dana, so be careful about that. This is a mistake that I've made multiple times. It kind of catches you off guard because everything else is a Skeletal card, but Cleaver is not. He is a very high tempo card. He helps you balance between tempo and value, right? You're playing an engine heavy deck, so your start is kind of slow, but with Cleaver, you get that very quick start in either round 1, round 2, or round 3. I guess tempo doesn't really matter as much in round 3, but in round 1 or round 2, it can matter quite a lot. It helps you not lose card advantage or maintain and keep your card advantage in round 2 if your opponent's trying to bleed you. And it can remove a lot of threats. It's something that's not super common in the meta and can catch people off guard. It's also an additional hand buff target for the Dwarven Agitators and an additional dwarf on your board that can help you pull out your Mahakam Volunteers. I think it's very, very versatile in the deck and has a lot of benefits. Your other dwarves are Sheldon Skags, very common in Skeletal lists these days. Great buff target for your Dwarven Agitators, getting double value for any hand buff target, any hand buff you end up landing on him. He's removal, he's a nice finisher. Sheldon Skags is usually going to be the dwarf that you hold in your hand in round 3 to lower the cooldown of your Saskia and maybe be the dwarf target for Barnabas. Your other dwarves, you've got the Mahakam Volunteers for thinning. There's not much thinning left available in the game now that the Witchers have been nerfed to oblivion. Mahakam Volunteer is a very cheap way to get 1 thinning, and it has dwarf synergy. The condition isn't super hard to meet when you run Cleaver, Sheldon Skags, Double Skirmisher, and Double Agitator. Agitators, great carryover potential. You play them in round 1 or round 2, and the round that you want to lose, and then you typically want to buff Sheldon Skags, and if you don't draw Sheldon Skags, you want to buff usually Cleaver. Maybe you buff Volunteers or Skirmishers if you don't have a choice, or if you think that you might need to translate that 2 points into tempo in the current round, and you plan on playing Mahakam Volunteers afterwards, for example. And Skirmisher is just a filler 4 provision bronze, not bad. It's got reach 1, so opponents sometimes try to play around this card by stacking the range row, which makes them play into your Crushing Trap, which is pretty good. And you have the Dragoons to help you move something from their range row into the melee row if you really need to get the target for your Dwarven Skirmisher. Alright, so that's it for the Dwarves. And how many Dryads are we actually running in this deck? Fauve is a Dryad, Circe is a Dryad, and Morin is a Dryad. Those are the 3 Dryads in the actual list, and then the Water of Brokilon also creates and spawns 2 Dryads. So those are your targets for Barnabas in terms of the Dryad, and then for Saskia, typically Morin is the Dryad that stays in your hand for a long time in round 3, because you might want to save the lock for like a big finisher. Your opponent might be playing like an Orders card as their second to last card, maybe an Ockfist, maybe a Damien de la Tour, or even a Detlef Higher Vampire, and you want to save that lock just in case. So you're typically going to be holding Morin for a while, which is great for Saskia, and then you play her again just before the Barnabas if you don't already have a Dryad target to buff. And Circe is a great card. She is one of my favorite cards in this Crimson Curse expansion. She's really, really good, has a lot of different ways you can use her, and she has a lot of synergies. She has 4 strength, 8 provision, gold. She's a Dryad. She has the Harmony tag, so you kind of want to play her relatively early so that she can get the boosts from Harmony. She damages a unit by 2 on deploy, and if she kills that unit, you get to boost a unit in your hand by 2. So if she gets the death blow, she's an 8 for 8. If the unit that you boost in hand is Sheldon Skaggs, that's another 2 bonus points. That would be a 10 for 8. And then the Harmony probably triggers like 2 or 3 times at least. So she can be like a 12 or 13 for 8, which is really, really great value. So moving on, we've got the Hawker Smugglers, a human engine. We mentioned a little bit with the Popco Gale. This card is interesting. It's got like pretty high variance, but I think it fits pretty well into this deck. You can play Hawker Smuggler in round 1. You can also play it in round 3. In round 3, in a long round 3 at least, if not answered, this gets great value, and if they do answer it with removal, then they're lacking the removal for your other engines like Popco and Treant and Saskia. And if you play it in round 1, it generates you a lot of carryover if they don't answer it. And if they do answer it, then again, that's like a removal answer that they're using up in round 1, a round that you don't have to win, that they won't have that answer for you in round 3. Crushing Trap, it's just a 1 of trap in this deck. It is there to basically push Dana to the 10 provision threshold, but it's also cheap trap. It's a 6 provision trap that gets you easily 8 value most of the time. Sometimes your opponents are holding artifact removal, so you have to make a read on if you think your opponent's playing artifact removal, maybe mulligan this card away and just never play it. Panther, the only beasts in your deck. This is also helping Dana get to the 10 provision limit. The beast also procs the harmonies because you don't have any other beasts in your deck. Panther's not bad. It's a 3+3, so it's a 6 for 6 provisions. It's got removal. It answers 3-point engines, bronze engines, especially like Northern Realms, Lyran Arbalest, Lyran Cavalry, Revenants, and you get the Harmony bonus. So if you have Cirsa and Water of Rocklan, the double dried fledglings, Panther's like playing 9 for 6, which is great. Dryad's Caress here is as a 1 of, just as a backup target for the Fauve. In case you end up drawing the Water of Rocklan, at least your Fauve isn't completely dead and can pull out Dryad's Caress for 6 points. You don't ever really want to play this card from hand. It's just there for mulligan fodder, and the fact that it's in your deck allows you to take a little bit of a riskier mulligan in round 3 so that your Fauve is never dead. Talked about Dragoons, and we basically covered all the cards in this list. There's a lot of interwoven synergy between the cards on this list. I mean, it is a Harmony deck after all. They all live in Harmony, right? So, what's the general game plan of this deck? The general game plan is a little bit different when you're going first and when you're going second, but typically you want to establish carryover with the Hawker Smugglers, with the Dwarven Agitators, maybe with Cirsa, and then thin out the Volunteers early. This is like your round 1, round 2 game plan, and then you want to win a long round 3 with Engine Overload. Ideally, you go into a 10-card round 3, and you have, in a 10-card round 3, you need to play a total of 11 cards, because you play 10 cards from your hand, and you're a leader that plays another card from your deck. So the 11 cards, in an ideal situation that you want to play in round 3, are Barnabas, Saskia, Mullane, Cleaver, Fauve for Water of Broccolon, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Morin, Popco Gale, Treant Boar, Cirsa, Sheldon Skaggs, that's 10. And then the 11th card can be a Panther to trigger the Beast Harmony, a Crushing Trap just for AoE damage, or even another engine like Hawker Smuggler. That's in the most ideal case, but if you're missing one or two of those cards, I think you're still in a very good position to play a lot of value and a lot of threats and to win the game. Now, what is the plan if you can't get a long round 3? And the most often when you can't get along round 3 is because you lost round 1 and they're pushing you in round 2. In that case, when they try to bleed you, you can use cards like Cleaver and use cards like Fauve into Water of Broccolon relatively early in the round to try to get enough tempo and enough engines onto the board so that your opponent will lose their card advantage if they try to push you deep into round 2. And then you go into round 3 with card advantage, maybe with your leader, maybe without, preferably with your leader if your opponent still has their leader. So you need to judge if you can afford to use your leader or not in round 2. When they try to bleed you, you want to get your engines out as early as possible. So once they go down from 7 cards to 6 cards in round 2 in their hand, that means they're trying to bleed you for sure. And you want to commit your cards like Treant Boar, like Saskia, like Pavko Gale. Don't hold on to them for too long, otherwise they're not going to get you enough value in round 2, and round 3 is going to be relatively shorter anyways, so they won't be great there either. One danger of this deck is losing round 1 on even, and when you're going first, that's a possibility. So when you're going first, sometimes you want to commit a big card in round 1. Be careful when you're going first with playing like too slowly, playing like double Dwarven Agitator and a Dwarven Skirmisher. That's very, very dangerous, and you're very likely to lose on even when you do that. Sometimes, especially against leaders like Detlaf that like to push round 1 and bleed round 2, you need to commit a little bit more tempo or a little bit more win conditions in round 1 to make sure that you don't lose on even. Sometimes they give you a tall target early to get a lot of tempo from Cleaver, and you can just take that. Or sometimes when you're on blue, you can commit Fauve into Water of Broccolon in round 1 just to set up a nice number of engines. And then you can play something like Hawker Smuggler and Dwarven Agitator. Maybe you get away with playing 1 Dwarven Agitator. You just have to judge how much reach, how much tempo your opponent is able to pull out in 1 turn, and to try to stay ahead of that. And when you can no longer proactively stay ahead of that, then that might be your cue to pass and just get out of round 1, losing 1 card up. So those are the general considerations for playing this deck. It's a lot of fun. It's really like it's a pretty complex deck to play. There's a lot of detailed interactions and sequencing things that you can do with this deck. So I think the best way to learn, or the best way to show you guys, is just with example games. And I've got 2 great games for you to watch, 1 going first and 1 going second. There's also a couple of different variations that you can play with this deck. So before I send you off to the gameplay, I just wanted to talk about a couple of techs. You can play cards like Ciaran. Ciaran's a pretty good card to put in the deck. It is another lock. It's an elf. If you feel like you're not having enough elves in your deck for Saskia or for Barnabas, you could play Ciaran. You could maybe replace 1 Hawker Smuggler with Ciaran. You could play Ida. If you're looking for artifact removal, that's very meta dependent. And another great card for this deck is actually Gabor. Gabor Zigrin. I don't have it in this version, but you can definitely do something like take out 1 Hawker Smuggler, take out 1 Panther. You don't necessarily need 2 Panthers. You only need 1 to activate the Dana provision. And then you take out the 7 Provision Smuggler, the 6 Provision Panther, and you put in 9 Provision Gabor and another 4 Provision card, perhaps like Hawker Healer. And Gabor gives you carryover in a different way compared to Smuggler. Smuggler also gives you carryover. Gabor gives you carryover through Resilience. Smuggler gives you potential carryover through Hand Buff. Gabor's more carryover if your opponent like dry passes round 2 and you slam a Gabor. That's great. And he's also an engine, right? He's an engine because you do play quite a few dwarves. But Gabor's a little bit worse in round 3. If you draw Gabor in round 3, it's worse than drawing Hawker Smuggler in round 3, I think, typically. Gabor usually only gets 7, maybe 8 value in round 3. Hawker Smuggler can be killed But if they're running out of removal, then Hawker Smuggler will end up getting you more than that in round 3. Anyways, those are just some considerations, potential cards you can play in the deck. And without further ado, I think we're going to send you over to the gameplay clips. Hope you enjoy. Let me know what you guys think, and leave your comments down below. Thanks again, and see you next time. We've got Engine Heavy Dana against Gwent Town playing Bran. Okay, I think he's playing Tall Bran. Let's see, what do we want here? We're going first. So we're going to need a little bit of tempo. We may probably want to play our Hawker Smugglers for carryover. We want Panther? Not really. I need to improve the quality of my hand a little bit because we're going first. And we might have to commit some engines. I probably want to hold this hand because I don't want to mess up the volunteers. Okay, so he's playing stuff like Hjalmar, Caldwell, and Yuta. If he plays one of those giants early, I can cleaver. I think what we'll want to do is we'll want to start with Hawker Smuggler. Buff the Hawker Smuggler up. Because we want to start getting carryover as soon as we can. Oh, nice. Lands on the Sheldon Skags. That's pretty lucky. And we don't mind our Sheldon Skags getting super tall in this version, in this matchup, because we can get a lot of value from Sheldon Skags, up to potentially 12 value on Sheldon Skags, if he resurrects Yuta with Sigdrifa.
Don't you pester me.
Good thing is that he doesn't have Coral. If he had Coral and 3 specials, he could have killed this at 9 strength. Alright, he doesn't give us a good cleaver target, so we're going to play a little bit slow and play Agitator. Buff the Sheldon. We'll play this Agitator in case he plays Combi. I don't think he plays Combi, though.
Isolation for too bloody long.
Buff on Fauve is really good as well. Like, basically, we just don't want to buff on the Dwarven Agitator. This deals 7 damage right now. I can wait a little bit longer with this. I'm trying to think if we need to commit an engine here. We probably do need to start committing an engine. Because I don't want to fall so far behind. We probably can't afford to play this Agitator. I need to play something good so that I don't end up losing this round on even. So we play the engine, maybe we play Cleaver, we try to get the Mahakam Volunteers out if Cleaver sticks, and then meanwhile we keep hand buffing and getting carryover value. A lot of this deck's game plan plays into carryover. You've got the Hawker Smugglers that give you hand buff and carryover, Sirsa gives you hand buff and carryover, and so does Agitators, the double Agitators. Olaf comes down. So he's probably going to Canute the Olaf. I do 6 damage right now and 2 with this, so we can actually kill that Olaf. That's perfect. That's actually perfect. Wow.
I'm a dwarf of business.
Dude, Treant Vor is so good. We just annihilated that Olaf. So there's no self wound going on there. He's not going to be able to get value off of his orders.
Come here, let's dance.
And if we can hit that twice with the Treant Vor, that'll get destroyed as well. We'll get an extra 3 points on our Treant Vor. I think I'm going to get the Volunteers out now while I can.
Best regiment in the whole
Move this back to
north.
the range row and then start using its damage again. And this Sheldon Skaggs is getting super thick.
Time for a beating.
Okay, he gets the Gimpy value, which is okay. At least he's not getting the Gimpy value on our Fauve and our Water of Brokilon with the double Dryad Fledglings. We're still behind right now. What card do we want to play here? We could potentially play Crushing Trap. On one hand, I don't really want to hit this. Like, I want to hit it if I can hit it twice and get extra value from this. The other hand, I want to save the Sheldon Skaggs. He hasn't played anything else tall yet, but he will. So I don't want to Sheldon Skaggs this. I think we want to save the Sheldon Skaggs for a Yuta or a Caldwell. I'm getting 2 points from this, and so it's not enough to play the Agitator yet. So I think I'm going to have to play Crushing Trap. It's not a great Crushing Trap, but maybe he'll be forced to play discard Skirmisher or Morkvarg. Okay, so we're getting 6 points here, but we're losing 2 points here. So we're getting 4 points from the Crushing Trap. That gets us up to 20. I need to make a 7-point play here. It's a bit tough. Might have to... Dryad's Caress is not enough. Thinking if I might have to play Water of Brocklon on this turn. It's a big commitment. I could also just play Barnabas for 8. I think I want to play the Water first to get a Dryad target out.
Whistles willows whip.
Trees feel pain
Move this
just
back.
as we do.
And then now I have Dryad and Dwarf, no Elf, but at least I can play Barnabas for 10. This gets me ahead. And then at some point, hopefully, I can find the time to Agitator this Sheldon Skaggs. This Sheldon Skaggs is massive, though. And if we get Last Say, that means our Sheldon Skaggs can snipe his Yuta or his Caldwell. We have 6 more cards that we have to draw from our deck and play. They're probably going to be Mullane, Cirsa, Morin, Saskia, Pavko, Gale. That's 5. And then Hawker, Smuggler. And then 1 more from Dana. There's actually 7 more cards we have to play. So maybe something like Panthers. He's going to play slow here. That's good for us. This gives us a chance to play the Agitator. We can play the Agitator, buff this up again, get some more carryover, Treant Boar, kill that. Now we're ahead with a decent margin, and I think he made a mistake there playing the Spores. He just gave us an opportunity to get more carryover. So what does he have left? He has Canute, he has Birna, Coral. We might actually want to push him in round 2. So Bran, like, he's only thinned 1 card. 2 cards from his deck. 1 from Leader, 1 from Hame Skald. He might not have the right hand for Coral or Birna. But maybe we can push him and 2-0 him. Despite being... Yeah, I think we can do that. I think the Pavko Gale is going to be worth more than the Saskia. We have an Elf. And we have a Dwarf. So this is cooldown 2. 2 damage with cooldown 2. That gets worse over time. I think we're going to get rid of this. Okay. So we're going to go for the 2-0, I think. Because oftentimes Skellige's hand can be really weird. In round 2. They'll have like a couple of 4 provision specials that they want to discard. But maybe not the Coral or the Birna. And sometimes they don't want a Birna until round 3 because they don't have the targets they want to discard with Birna yet. So what am I pulling with Leader? It could be Cirsa. It could be Saskia. It could be Morin. Morin is 7. Saskia's got to be worth more than Morin. Cirsa's worth about 8. I think this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to... We're actually gonna Dana out Saskia. I should have maybe just kept Saskia, to be fair.
Hold the lines!
If I keep Saskia, I could Dana out like the Cirsa and not have the Panther. It would be a little bit better for the 2-0. I have an Elf, Dwarf. I don't have a Dryad. Yeah, I should have kept the Saskia. And I get the Dryad with the Dana.
Yes, Dwan.
She should have cooldown too, because I had the Elf and the Dwarf in my hand when I used her ability. So that's something that you ought to be careful about with Saskia. You want to always use her ability first before you potentially play your last Elf or your last Dwarf or your last Dryad from your hand. If I had used Mullane first, she would have gone to cooldown 3. Bran? This is where, like, knowing your opponent really helps. Bran players, they like to have bad cards in hand. He might have, Gwent, our opponent, might have expected us to dry pass this round and purposely kept a bad card in hand to throw away when we dry pass.
God speak to him.
I think we're panthering here. Steersa would have been much better.
Maim, kill!
Wow. He's really struggling. So I'm gonna Sheldon. And then
Lethal as
we'll
melons.
Barnabas.
You're one dead
Not use the
standard
Saskia
heat.
right now. We're up 20 points. He has 3 cards left. It's pretty obvious that he has an awkward hand, I think. That he's playing stuff like Canute on nothing, playing a 9 provision card for 6. I think we smell the blood in the water and we just go for the kill. Now he has to take a potentially suboptimal Birna, not knowing what he's going to draw into and what he needs to discard. Good that it hit double Sheldon. He discarded Scald and Savage Bear, and then we finish with the Barnabas.
What? Oh, yes, I'm on it.
And he needs 28 points and 2 cards. There's no way he's doing this. That's a 2-0. Not bad, not bad at all. I didn't expect this deck to go 2-0, but pushing round 2 against Skellige, who needs to have exactly the right parts of their discard combo in their hand in order to use them effectively, is a really, really strong strategy against Skellige. Alright, against Detlef. I think this is a showdown between the 2 strongest leaders from this Crimson Curse expansion, in my opinion. Okay, we're going second, so it's important to note if you're going first or second. When we're going second, we're looking to just get some carryover and throw away bad cards. We're gonna mulligan away our Fauve targets. So we've got Hawker Smuggler, which we probably want to play for carryover. Agitator to play for carryover, and then Mahakam Volunteers for thinning. We don't have a very good hand, so we would actually like to probably drag this round out. Drag this round out, and then eventually lose it is our plan. And if he tries to push us in round 2, then we can out-tempo him perhaps with a combination of like Cleaver, with our hand buff. This is... I didn't want it to land on the Agitator, unfortunately. So we don't really get any carryover from him.
Coexistence, Maya!
Cleaver is nice here because, as you can see, sometimes we don't draw the Sheldon. Normally we want to boost the Sheldon. And if we don't draw the Sheldon, we're forced to we're forced to hand buff with the agitator like one of these bronze dwarves, and it feels really bad because normally these are bronze dwarves that you want to mulligan in round 3, but if you hand buff them, then you're like, well, this is kind of worth 7 now, and I maybe want to keep it now. But you'd much rather buff something like Cleaver that potentially gets you maybe 11 value, 10 value, and buff that up by 2 instead of one of these bronze dwarves.
This'll only hurt a bit.
He plays Queen of the Night. So I think he's playing Dettlaff, Higher Vampire. A lot of Dettlaff decks play Queen of the Night as a way to purify and unlock Dettlaff, Higher Vampire. So that's something that we got to keep in mind. I don't have any elves in hand right now, so I actually kind of want to keep the Dragoon. I'd rather play the Dwarven Skirmisher. Even though the Dwarven Skirmisher is worth more points than the Dragoon for later, I think I'd rather play this because I value having the elf in hand for stuff like Saskia and maybe even Barnabas. So he has Vitality and we have Bleeding, so we're losing 2 points a turn here. We need something like 19 or 20 points in 2 cards to take it, so I'm gonna have to pass here. Too bad, because I would have liked to throw away 1 more card. But we don't have the tempo to be able to overtake him. Drawing Sheldon's great. These are all good cards. We can get rid of Skirmisher. I like this Hawker Smuggler because it allows us to get more carryover. And now that we have an elf, by drawing into the Mullane and giving ourselves an elf, we don't need the Dragoon that much anymore. And nice, we draw Fauve. Fisher King. So I think this is Crimson Curse, right? So we play Hawker Smuggler, he passes, and then we play Panther. The other thing I could do is just play Panther, and then if he passes, we pass. But if I play Hawker Smuggler now, I'm getting 2 hand buff, 2 carryover. That's probably worth it. And then the 11 cards we play in round 3 are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hopefully 8, 9, 10, 11. Perfect. This way also, if he's not looking to go into a long round 3... Oh man, and we buffed the Panther. That's really unlucky. That's very unfortunate. I could play the Crushing Trap and keep the Panther. The Panther is a beast for the Harmony. I'm probably not going to get great value on the Crushing Trap because he's going to spread his vampires out and his units out onto 2 rows. And we're going to be removing a lot of his units because we have a lot of removal. We're going to want to try to remove his vampires as well. And maybe he has artifact removal. Maybe he's playing Nithral. We get actually 3 hand buff here. Unfortunately, none of them land on the Sheldon. And this is a beast, so this helps our Harmony a lot as well. Okay, we don't want Water of Brokilon. This is definitely a no. And then I'm trying to see what we're going to pull from Leader. It's going to be Morin or Circe. Very unfortunate, because neither of those, or both of those are Dryads. Neither of them proc Fauve. I think we're going to get rid of the Agitator here. Alright, we got Circe. Like, I really want to play Fauve into Water of Brokilon here. Normally I would combo that with Leader to buff them. But none of these cards are... The only good card that we want to pull from our deck with Leader now is Morin. And she's a Dryad. So either I wait to Water of Brokilon, in which case I would drop one of my engines, like Saskia perhaps. We could do that. Yeah, we could actually do that. It's either that or just play Fauve and have the Dryad Fledglings be only at 3 strength, and that's really susceptible to Gimpy. So I think it's worth it to play this first. We want to get the
I
Saskia
kneel
out
before
really
no
early
one.
because we want to have Dwarf, Elf, and Dryad in hand while Saskia is on the board. Then she has cooldown 1. Really strong. She's really strong early in the round, but when the round comes to an end and you start playing your last Dwarf, your last Dryad, and your last Elf, she starts going from cooldown 1 to cooldown 2 to cooldown 3 and finally cooldown 4. So she's one of those engines that you want to prioritize over Pavko, Gale, or Treant Boar. But honestly, now that I think about it, we're never going to be able to get the Dryad fledglings out as a 4 on the turn that we played them. Unless we decide to take a hit and Dana out something else that's not the Dryad. I don't think it's worth it to Dana out any of this other stuff. So we might as well just do it anyways. We might as well just do this now.
Lady Ethne won't let us talk to strangers.
No! Let the doe live!
Next turn we play one of these engines. It'll trigger the Harmony. There's Wild Hunt Hound.
We'll get that fixed in no time. I
Cleaver's
promise.
doing 6 damage next turn. We need to save an answer for... Ooh. Tainted Ale. That's kind of new. Why does he run Tainted Ale? Just for removal? Or is there some sort of combo with this? I was going to say we need to save Leader for Morin to lock the Detlef Higher Vampire. That's our only answer to Detlef Higher Vampire. I want to get this engine going too. This does 6 damage right now. It'll do 5 next turn. It's still good. I want to remove vampires from his board, but I also don't want to hit this because that's my target for Circe right now. I think we'll get more targets for Circe though. Maybe I just start hitting this, and then next turn I can kill it with the Pavko. I think we'll get more targets.
Soon, sisters.
Alright, he's saving it. So now we can play the Cleaver, get our 5 damage on this, maximum value on the Cleaver.
I'm a dwarf of business.
Move that, and we kill his vampire. So stuff like Oriana is a little bit worse. We're up a decent amount of points here. 12. We're down 1 card, but we still have Leader. He has 2 charges left. Our Leader's worth like 7 points. His Leader's worth maybe 6 or 8 points. But we have 2 engines on the board as well. And our hand quality is very good. I want to drop the Circe soon. Because she can still harmonize with Mullane and with Panther and Barnabas. This is potentially an 8 plus a 2. By hand buffing Sheldon, she's 8 plus 2, that's 10, plus 3 Harmony. Actually, 4 Harmony. We don't have an elf on the board either. We do have a dwarf already on the board. So it's 3.
A word once given will never break.
Alright, he kills our other engine. So now we can play the Circe.
Sisters! Follow me!
Buff our Sheldon Skags. I'm trying to decide what to hit. If I plan on panthering the Regis, then I should hit the Regis. If I plan on Mulaning the Regis, then I should hit the Hound. Mullane is flexible. Mullane can do 4 damage to 1 unit each, or 1 damage to 4 different units. So I think we're gonna hit the Regis. I still want to kill the vampires just in case. We have a Dryad and a Dwarf on the board, and once we play this Elf, we can potentially play Barnabas. That's a vampire as well. And Panther now. And Pavko Gale. Pavko Gale. The vampire. We don't care if this Dryad dies, because we still have a Dryad, we still have a Dwarf, and we still have an Elf. He's only got 1 Dettlaff charge left. Do I need to take the shield off? I don't think I really need to take the shield off. But I need to play the Elf. Or what I could do is I could Sheldon Skaggs now. I could Sheldon Skaggs now, hit this, and then hopefully I get a better Mullane target later. Because I don't want to Mullane the Wispus, and I don't want to lose a damage to the shield. I'm still saving the leader in case he plays Dettlaff at some point, so we have the lock. Alright, and we can just Mullane one of these riders. Kill the Plumard, the vampire. Mullane rider. He might kill our only elf. He does have a Tainted Ale and the Dettlaff ping, but we're still increasing our lead. Proto Flutter. He's not gonna kill the elf. Okay. So what are we pulling from our deck? I think it's Morin just for 7 points. And I think we pull the Morin before we play the Barnabas because I don't want to boost anything to 8 in case he has Geralt of Rivia. There's nothing worth locking.
Mother will be proud.
And then we buff this, and this dwarf. We have 0 8s and a bunch of 7s. And he needs 26 points. He's got 2 from Tainted Ale, 2, maybe 4 from Dettlaff. Yeah, we got this. Easy. Nice game. Is Dana better than Dettlaff? Wow. I don't know. His deck was a little bit a non-standard Dettlaff list. But this Dana list has proven to be really, really strong. A lot of points. Even though almost all of our engines got answered, except for Pavko Gale, everything got answered. We still just had so many points from the carryover, from the quality of our cards, and our flexible leader being able to pull out something that we didn't draw into in our deck. As you can see, like, the leader here, Dana, she gets to tutor out whatever you want that's remaining in your deck. She's so much stronger than like a Calvide or a Calanthe, because especially Calanthe, like she has to draw the top card of your deck, which is likely to be a bronze. In this case, we had 6 or 7 bad cards left in our deck and only 1 good card, which is Morin. But because our leader lets us choose which card we want to pull from our deck, we can pull guaranteed the good card.